This is a More Than Just Podcast production.
Welcome to Spockcast, Season 10, Episode 4. My name is Jonathan Kuline. I am in Florenceville, Bristol, New Brunswick, and I am joined once again by Jaime Lopez Jr. in Seattle, Washington.
How's it going?
Good, brother. How are you?
Doing okay. You know, enjoying the waning days of summer, and pretty soon the autumn and fall time period's coming up.
So I think we need to mention it just right off the top. You and I cannot talk about baseball in this episode because every time we talk about baseball, the Mariners go on a losing streak. So I think it's important for us to leave them alone to do their thing.
Just try not to jinx it. Yeah.
Speaking of the waning days of summer. All right. Well, this episode, we're going to talk about Strange New Worlds. We're going to talk about Silo, and we're going to talk about the new TV show Lanterns, which debuted this week, which is pretty exciting. And we've got a slew of news to get to. But first, we're going to kick things off with our fact check. Jaime, what do you got for us?
Let's see. We've got one related to, looks like which shift, what the Cerritos crew in Star Trek Lower Decks. So I'm going to read verbatim here from our wonderful founders' notes. Mariner, Boimler, Tandy, and Rutherford are on Beta shift. That is Beta shift aboard the Cerritos. Delta shift was the separate group of folks who work the opposite hours and are the main rivals, antagonists in a couple episodes. Looks like Terminal Provocations and Room for Growth.
Fair enough.
And then there's some more notes about like day, night shift, swing shift as being kind of the most common terms, although that can vary across things. And I do remember this one here about Captain Jellicoe on the USS Enterprise in TNG instituting a fourth shift, which was different than the normal 3 shifts that they had. So
Jellicoe, always bringing the bad stuff.
Yeah. I feel like it's one of those things where, you say, well, divide a nominal human-centric 24-hour day into 3 shifts. I was like, okay, well, that would be, 8 hours for each shift if it was, am I doing my math right? Yeah, 8 hours. Yep. If you do it for 4 shifts, then it's like, well, then it's a 6-hour shift, and it's unclear to me, since you don't have more people, are you showing up 1.5 times per day, twice a day? Like, how does that work? So you can see how if you're not used to that as a ship, it's disruptive to your lifestyle and probably messes up your REM cycle and other things for sleep. I think if you started on a ship that was already with the 4 shifts, it's probably whatever, this is just the way it is, right? You start as a new cadet, a new ensign kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, better chance of seeing some of the crew that you don't normally see. I guess that's something.
Right.
All right. What else you got?
Oh, I missed one other one. I guess during the Vulcan Pike.
Oh, right.
Era, I did this insane 14 shifts of 42 minutes where officers alter rotations except for 5 specific intervals in the 4.5 Vulcans episode. Like that's too far, It's like I can't even. My shift is not even an episode. It's kind of the gist.
It does make you wonder what shifts are actually on a Vulcan ship now, doesn't it?
Yeah, it feels like you're going down the gym member that does circuits where it's 2 minutes of this, 2 minutes of that. And I'm like, okay, I see why it makes sense, for training up your body. How does this make sense in a is it a shift in volleyball where everybody rotates to the left in a cycle? You're the server and eventually you make your way to the front and towards the back again. I don't know, it's weird.
I was thinking about hockey shifts. Hockey players, they play and then they switch on the fly and they come back out. The idea is that you go as hard as you can go for 60 seconds and then you switch out so that somebody else can take your place. You can catch your wind, get a drink, and then jump back on. 42 minutes, not quite the same, but do they expect them to just go crazy for 42 minutes?
Yep, somebody just absolutely analyzing that quasar for 42 minutes, and after that, you're just sitting there doing nothing. You got to stay fresh, I guess.
Yep.
Time to go. I don't know, jiggle some photon torpedoes for a bit, I suppose.
Cool. What's next?
Apparently, from IMDb, the episode title, chiaroscuro. Chiaroscuro, how's that pronounced?
Yeah, I think it's chiaroscuro.
Chiaroscuro is an Italian art term meaning light, dark, literally derived from chiaro, meaning clear or bright, and scuro, which is dark. It's used to describe the contrast between light and shadow on a flat surface. So this is a technique used to make flat objects, like paintings, appear three-dimensional and create that illusion of volume and depth. So that's wow.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, of course, this was the black and white episode we got last week of Star Trek: Strange World.
Mm-hmm. That definitely tracks. You've also got some tidbits here that are, arguably Easter eggs, if we had caught them, that the Klingon drinking song was first heard in DS9 in Way of the Warrior, way back in, it feels weird saying this, 3+ decades ago.
Oh, Lord.
The Lieutenant Commander Worf and an officer from the Klingon side, Hiraga, who was a friend of his father's, they sung that. Apparently it was heard twice on Voyager. So in the Bards of the Dead episode, one that was really B'Elanna focused, right? Mm-hmm. I think on her family. Mm-hmm. The doctor here apparently was singing the song to teach it to 7 and 9. And it was also in the season 7 episode Prophecy, which again is a B'Elanna focused one where this group of Klingons had been lost in the Delta Quadrant, believed that B'Elanna's child might be the chosen one guiding their way.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's any excuse to have Robert Picardo sing. I think he'll volunteer for that one, considering he just did a whole musical episode on the Academy series. So cool. All right, let's jump over to the headlines. We're going to start with a bummer, unfortunately, to report the untimely death of former Heroes star Hayden Panettiere. She died this week at the age of 36. Very, very tragic loss. It sounds like she died of a drug overdose. The police have said there was no foul play, but obviously it's a tragedy to have somebody so young die. And obviously really kind of burst on the scene as a child actor, and then really kind of took it up a notch as a teenager when she starred on that NBC show Heroes for 4 seasons. And it was definitely one of those people who was, chased around by the paparazzi, very famous, very beautiful, and apparently did not enjoy that experience very much. Obviously, she was in the spotlight during, the advent of the social media era starting and the demand across, internet for all paparazzi and all that stuff. So not good for the mental health. And then she apparently had dealt with substance addiction over the years, and then had some serious issues around her postpartum depression, which she went public with. So, a very talented person with a lot of issues, and unfortunately a very tragic ending. What's your relationship to Hayden Panettiere, and what do you think of this unfortunate outcome?
Yeah, I think the Heroes TV show that you mentioned was about where I thought. And when they said her age here, I was like, what? No, that's nuts. She can't be 36. You've known her for like forever. And then I did the math and said, okay, that show was probably around 2010, 16 years. I'm like, I guess she might have been about 20 when she did that show.
I think she just turned 18 when it came on.
Yeah. So I was pretty close on the math. Where I'm like, okay, this is the only way in which this person has seemingly been around forever and yet still be so young when they passed away.
Yeah. It's it was one of those things where she kind of, I know she was a child actor and she was in some things, but nothing I had really watched, and I didn't really have any kind of relationship with her until that show. But I mean, that show was such a huge hit, especially the first couple seasons, and she just kind of launched into superstardom very, very quickly. So I mean, obviously that that can be very complicated for people. Some people deal well with fame and some don't, and so very, very, very tragic, very, very sad story. But obviously, even for such a short life, she left quite a legacy of her work. That show people still really enjoy. She did another popular show called Nashville for a number of years that people were quite fans of. And then she published a memoir just a few months back. So it's crazy to think, like you say. I think I did the same thing when they said she was 36. I kind of did a double take. I was like, well, no, yeah, that's okay, but boy, that's sad.
Yeah, it really is.
All right, well, let's try and move on to something more cheerful. Last weekend was D23, the big Disney focused event in Anaheim, California, and it kind of covers a lot of bases. It's not just around their sort of, Marvel Star Wars stuff. It's around, Pixar and the Disney proper, the amusement parks, people who are fans of Disney, not just the things that Disney has bought over the years. But the news that came out of that was pretty big, and it's news that I think we're kind of expecting maybe in July during Comic-Con in San Diego. They announced the initial lineup of X-Men for the new X-Men reboot inside the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So just quickly, we'll whip through the names here. So among the names are Sadie Sink is Jean Grey. So of course, Sadie was best known for Stranger Things. We got Kit Connor, who's best known for the TV show Heartstopper, is Cyclops. Samara Weaving is going to be Emma Frost. I think they previously announced that one. Christopher Abbott, best known for East of Eden, is Professor Xavier. Adam Driver, of course, Kylo Ren himself, is going to be playing Mr. Sinister, a well-known comic book character and X-Men 97, I believe, character, but not one that we've seen in live action yet. That's pretty cool. Maya Boyd, who is a Broadway actress and apparently quite good young actor, is going to be playing Storm, and Indy Navarrete, I should say, is going to be playing Rogue. She was the breakout star this season, early this spring with the movie Obsession. So people were pretty excited to see her sign on for that. I don't know about you. I don't have a huge relationship other than Sadie Sink and obviously Adam Driver. I don't have a huge relationship with any of these actors, but I don't actually mind that. I actually kind of like it when Marvel or anybody creating a franchise kind of starts with some people that I don't have all that baggage with. What's your takeaway from this sort of pile of casting news?
Yeah, I'm in a very similar spot. I am wondering a couple things and then a statement after that. So one thing I'm wondering is, why do you think they recast Professor Xavier rather than going back to like James McAvoy? We were talking the other day of like, just wait for Michael Fassbender and James McAvoy to age up enough, and maybe they've aged up enough to be roughly the same age as what Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen were back in 2000 when they started the X-Men original series.
Yeah, I think it's a fair point. My impression would be that they want a complete separation from old to new. Mm-hmm. I suspect we're going to see between Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars kind of a resolution for the previous iteration of X-Men. I don't know whether that's a fatal one or if that is just like they'll be sort of, pocketed off to their own little, end of their own storyline somewhere. But I get the impression that that they're kind of putting a lid on that whole Fox previous existence thing. I'll be curious to see if that includes Hugh Jackman, because obviously there's nobody more beloved from those franchise, from that whole sort of series of movies as him. But I mean, it could also just be a function of money. I bet you they got, I bet you they got Chris Abbott for a significantly lower amount of money than they would have to pay James McAvoy to do that role. So it could be, hey, we're signing this guy for, the league minimum, as it were, and he's going to be playing this part for, who knows how many years and different X-Men iterations and crossovers and who knows what. So maybe it's simple finances. They just don't want to have to pay McAvoy, $100 million over the next 15 years to play this character.
Right. More question behind how this article is written. So they give you movies. I'm unclear if these are the most recent movies or the most notable movies for all of these people, because Ferrari for Adam Driver is a choice. Is that his most recent film? Or?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they're trying to go for. I mean, this is Entertainment Weekly that we're reading this summary from, and you're right. It wouldn't have been my first choice, but maybe that is a very more mainstream one. Although Star Wars, the 3 movies were probably the most widely. I mean, other than Girls, obviously Girls was a big hit on HBO, but yeah, I don't know. And Chris Abbott's actually from Girls too, right? Chris Abbott was he was Marnie's boyfriend for the first couple seasons of Girls. I don't know if you watch Girls. I watched all of Girls because my wife wanted to watch Girls. I watched it in sort of a hate-watchy kind of way. I found most of the characters very unlikable, but yeah. Anyways, I thought Adam Driver was like sort of the wild card in this mix, obviously, because everybody else is so young, and not that Adam's not young; he's in his 30s, but it's definitely interesting that they've sort of gone a different direction too, especially because both iterations, as you mentioned, the Xavier and Magneto from 2000, the Xavier and Magneto when they did the reboot. It's always been that duality, right? It's always about those two characters and their sort of different beliefs about what mutants should be and how they should be identified and all the ins and outs of that relationship. It's interesting that this reboot doesn't feature a Magneto. Now, you could say yet. It's quite possible that character comes along at some point. It also, one of the ones that comic fans have wrestled with for a long time is Magneto's origin is really important to the character, and it's starting to get harder and harder to work that in. So Magneto and they covered it really well in the movies, was a Holocaust survivor, right? And like he was a little kid and during the Holocaust. He watched his parents and all his loved ones and all the Jewish diaspora die, and that is why he's such a militant advocate for mutant rights, is because he doesn't want to see that happen again to mutants. It's now been 70 years since the end of that war. It's getting harder and harder to tie that together.
I think if you are going to keep it completely the same, I think it is tough. I think it is like if I had to make a choice, right? Of like, how do I continue to use that particular part of his story? I'd say then you have to somehow disassociate him from being a normal contemporary of Charles Xavier, right? So I'm like, you might have to Captain America him. So he did experience in the past the Holocaust.
Oh, it's Magneto, yeah,
Magneto, and then he gets Captain America like glaciered for a bit. And then he can become
time traveled or who knows what.
And then he has to become a contemporary to Charles Xavier if you really wanted to keep the like, hey, they're roughly the same age kind of thing, right?
Well, and it is a tragedy of human existence that unfortunately Holocausts and genocides continue to happen to this day. They could do some kind of rewrite where he's not a Jewish Holocaust survivor, he's a Holocaust survivor from, insert unfortunately many other countries. He could be from the Balkans in the 90s, he could be from Africa from the last 30 years. There's been multiple. It could be from the Middle East. Like there's a lot of possibilities if you wanted to really kind of get radical with the character. I can't imagine that that's comfortable ground for the MCU to dip into, though.
Yeah, I think there's even difficulty if you said, okay, well, let's make it, a fictional place like Sokovia, Latvia, right? Then you end up with a different problem of like, I think the Jewish community thinking, wait a minute, hold on, this is like turning Black Panther into a white dude, right? Like,
yeah,
you've changed a fundamental part of how we were able to connect to this character.
Well, and again, they both in the movies and in the comics, Magneto's Jewishness is a fundamental part of his character. It really does define him. Those experiences define him. If you lose that motivation, it would be hard to find something that would resonate quite as impactfully. So, yeah, I think it's interesting, and I don't know how much of a relationship you have with the Mr. Sinister character that Adam Driver's been cast as, but that's an interesting wrinkle because there's been some different takes on that character over the years. I remember when he debuted and some of the initial stories wasn't necessarily my cup of tea, but I do know from the from the recent past of the X-Men, the Jonathan Hickman run, that they kind of redefined the character a little bit and did some different things. And I did read an article recently that said that that's kind of some of the material they're going to mine for this work. So could be interesting. Do you have any kind of connection to Mr. Sinister?
Only mildly in the comics, and my sort of view of the character is much more driven by his portrayal in the X-Men the animated series from the 90s.
Yeah.
So assuming going off of how close those happen to be, given that they do put their own riff on characters, if he's pretty close to the comics, what he was in the X-Men X-Men 97 or X-Men 92, then it's probably pretty similar to what I have in my head. If it's very wildly different, like the way that we talked about Batman the animated series made Clayface wildly different in that show, and then that has then influenced future iterations of the character.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, I'm excited that they're finally getting to this. Obviously, we're not going to get this until after the sort of big crossover Avengers stuff that's coming. So we've got Doomsday, we've got Secret War, and then so Doomsday's coming this Christmas time. Next Christmas time or winter holiday, we're going to get the Secret War or Secret Wars, and then not until the following May 5th, 2028, are we getting the X-Men finally. It's pretty wild when you think about how long it's of a journey it's been to get this back in-house, and then also once they got it back in-house to get to the point where they could actually start exploring this. But it is kind of cool when you think about, some of the stuff that people have, started getting a little bit, of the exhaustion of well-worn characters and stuff like that. It's kind of fun that they're going to insert something new in.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting setup. I have no notable flaws here in their choices. The statement I realize now, because I said there are two questions in a statement. The statement I'm going to make is it will be nigh impossible and definitely very controversial to recast Wolverine, given that it's been the same man since. I really encourage people, right? Because 26 years is a lot to think about. I want you to compare, Deadpool and Wolverine from a year or two ago. I forget how long it's been.
Yeah, I think it's been
Okay. So compare, how jacked, no pun intended, Hugh Jackman's body is there. Now go look at him in a pretty good for the time body. That's like not a dad bod. I think that's unfair to say.
But not quite what he was. Not quite as yoked as he is now.
Yeah. It was a different era. Okay, this was like dad was a lumberjack and in pretty good shape, muscular, but sort of less cut, and veiny.
The rumor that has been floated around is that Marvel is talking with Henry Cavill about playing a role in this X-Men universe. And they have not specifically said anything about it, but the speculation is, well, if you were going to put him in these movies, who would he be? And he's young and he's handsome, and he's in his 30s too, but would he be a better Magneto? Would he be a better Wolverine? I mean, he did play Wolverine in that exact thing we were just talking about in the Wolverine Deadpool movie, right? It would be pretty on the nose to have that be that iteration of that character, but I mean, I really actually didn't mind Henry Cavill's. I don't think he had the greatest material to work with during the Zack Snyder era of DC movies, but I actually don't mind Henry Cavill as an actor. I think he's pretty strong, and I mean, gorgeous. He's a really, really handsome man. So I think he could carry a part like that really well. So maybe also jacked and hairy. So
right.
Maybe it makes sense. Okay. Let's jump to more Marvel news from D23. So they shared the same trailer, the Doomsday trailer, that they originally aired at Comic-Con but didn't release publicly. So we knew that the trailer existed. People had done like breakdowns who were in the room. There was a couple of bootlegs that you could find if you went looking for them. But now we got a full, clean release of that trailer. It's pretty epic. It's pretty intense. They really kind of try a little bit more to make Doom seem like he is going to be Dr. Doom, be this like real heavyweight character from the Fantastic Four's universe. I mean, we see him going toe to toe with Thor and basically blocking a blow from his axe with his hand and tossing him aside like he's a rag doll. We see him raising sentinels up from the ground. They're definitely doing a good job of making this into a pretty intensely powered character. Any good takeaways from this trailer?
I think kudos, and granted they had material to work with here, but kudos to the people that edit this trailer, because they very immediately give you the sense of how does Doctor Doom work as a techno sorcerer. So it starts out with him, on his throne doing, or being by some glowing glyphs that feel like they would fit in a Doctor Strange kind of movie. And then, of course, he's wearing armor. It's a little hard to tell. Is it like, a Knight of the Seven Kingdoms kind of armor? Is it Iron Man kind of armor? I think when you see the, very comic book kind of accurate Sentinels that are very clearly, they're machines, whether he's raising them through some sorcery, because they might just be busted machines, right? Like, it gives you that other half of like, oh yeah, well, like, technology is a big part of what he does. So
yep.
I like that they did that, so it's not just another Doctor Strange villain. If you're not familiar with Doctor Doom, we're thinking like normal people, right, who don't live and breathe this like we do, and not just this is an Iron Man villain. It's like kind of a blend, right? It's a different sort of thing, because not everybody has seen canonically good takes on this. I mean, a lot of the other Fantastic Four takes on Doctor Doom have had all sorts of varying issues. This feels. And we talked about not jinxing things with baseball. Like, this feels, I don't want to jinx it, but this feels like Avengers Doomsday is going to at least have a very good take on Doctor Doom. It seems like it's set up for some success here.
Yeah, and I think we talked about it before, but one of the truisms that I have heard over the years over and over again about comic writing, and I think it applies to movie writing and anything else, is your heroes are only as good as your villains. The villains really have to crackle in order to have great a great conflict. And the best of those villains are the ones who have in their minds justification for their behavior. They're not it's not just I want to rule the world. It's I was wronged. I was I suffered a loss. I suffered a humiliation. I suffered therefore what I do is justified. And Doom in the comics, Doom in even some of the different iterations in the cartoons and stories over the years, he's a very, very tragic figure. In this trailer, they kind of reference, he lost everything, in the comics, and I'm sure probably in this origin story, it's going to be tied in the fact that his mother was dragged into hell by Mephisto. So, there's going to be, some pretty occult stuff happening, and you're right. Then you also see this sort of technological side too. So I think it's going to be a really cool character. And it's so weird that they're paying like $100 million to Robert Downey Jr. to wear a mask for 2 hours or whatever it is for these two movies, 4.5 hours. But whatever works. I don't care. I'm not. I'll just pay my movie ticket price. Well, I'll be good. This next trailer that they shared was the one that really caught me. They shared the first trailer for Vision Quest, which is the Paul Bettany starred third part of the WandaVision Agatha All Along trilogy, the third and final part. This is following the life of the Vision, who is sort of reeling from the effects of dying and then coming back as a white version of himself, and then kind of through magical methods having his possibly memories reattached. Yeah, it's interesting the way we sort of look at it too, because we've seen the Paul Bettany playing Vision as a human avatar in the movies before, and here we see that he's kind of created this mind palace, this sort of like perfect utopia inside his mind, and he's not in there alone. He's in there with all the other AIs from the Marvel universe. So we see most notably Ultron, played by James Spader, with wicked glee and nefarious intent. But we also see glimpses. We see Dumb E. We see what's the one that Emily Hempstead plays. I don't have them all the names memorized, but it's kind of an interesting take on how would these AI programs who have essentially reached sentience interact within this sort of parameters of this character's mind. but it also seems like it's got sort of real world consequences. So we do see, characters from Agatha all along. We see Billy, and so I think this is going to be really great. I have a really high hopes for this one. I love those two other series, and if they can land this, I think this will be the most successful thing that they've done since they did the sort of Disney Plus Marvel stuff.
Yeah, this one does look pretty interesting. I wasn't sure when I saw some of the initial leaks and you see human avatars. I was like, oh, is this going to be like that DS9 episode where everybody was like in the 1930s or 40s? Like, I can't even remember. Was it like a newspaper or book? Yeah, it was a newspaper. I thought maybe it was a book publisher. It was something like that, right? Like, yeah, but no, it's taking place inside of the Vision's mind. So fascinating take coming up on October 14th. So not that far away.
No, it's exciting. Hopefully, we'll be able to cover that one. We got a couple of Star Wars things that are worth mentioning. We got a first trailer for Ahsoka Season 2. This is coming in January, so not too far off. And, it looks again pretty epic. We got, glimpses of, Thrawn's return to the main Star Wars universe, basically declaring war on the New Republic. We got, Ahsoka and Sabine, and they're trying to figure out the mysteries of being in the other end of the universe, and lots of familiar faces. It looks like it's a lot of pew 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 in there, and some good mystery mixed in there. I enjoyed the first one because I'm such a huge Rebels head. I really loved the Ahsoka spin just because it was essentially like a 5th season of Rebels, and this looks like it's going to be a 6th. I'm pretty excited, and on top of that, obviously we saw lots of Hayden Christensen back as Force Ghost Anakin, and some flashback stuff to when Ahsoka was younger. So it's covering some pretty interesting ground. What did you like about this one?
Yeah, I'm definitely all for seeing more Thrawn. I think his ending line at the end of the season 1 of long live the Empire, as he zooms away back to the normal Star Wars galaxy. That's great. Some of the smaller things seen that was like, ooh, that'll be interesting is we got a very small glimpse of Rory McCann, who played the Hound, Sandor Clegane. He's taking over the Balin Skull character because the other actor unfortunately passed away.
Yep. And looks pretty, like obviously they're both large men, and I think that's a decent replacement as far as aesthetic.
Right. You see the I don't know, like lightsaber bow and arrow that Omega had in the Bad Batch. I thought that was cool to see in live action. And then seeing, I totally forget the sort of Jedi educator droid, but he goes all General Grievous.
He's got a whole bunch of arms and sabers. It's pretty dope.
So that's that. There's definitely some cool stuff in there. I'm excited for this one. It's what, January 20th looks like.
Yeah. Again, not that far off. Not that January's coming soon. Calm down, Canadians. It's not that bad. But it's all things being equal, it's not that far off. I think it looks really good. I'm excited for that one. We talked about how weird it was that Wonder Man had gotten the axe, given the fact that it was critically well regarded. A lot of the fans enjoyed it, and particularly because Yahya Abdul-Mateen II had been nominated just recently for an Emmy Award for his performance in that show. It took us all by surprise, but apparently it also took Yahya by surprise. He came out this week and made some comments for the first time after this cancellation, and he said that the optics of canceling this series with a black lead on the heels of announcing that they're pretty much done with producing the Blade series, the Blade movies that they were going to do with Mahershala Ali, is a pretty damning pair of events in sequence. He says, I was told that it had something to do with viewership numbers. I wasn't told what those numbers were, but ultimately, for whatever reason, It was, I think, they decided they didn't make sense for the business, and that's the decision we had to live with, and we keep marching forward. But he also, he he kind of called out Marvel for canceling projects led by black actors. I think the optics are obvious. If I'm a big business, if I'm Disney, if I'm Marvel, I don't want to be attached to those optics. I think he's right. I think I think we talked about it ourselves. Like, they had something that was a hit, or not necessarily a hit, but they had something that was well regarded. They had obviously a performance worthy of in the esteem of Hollywood for being nominated for a major award. It's hard to argue with his case for this.
Yeah, I agree the optics are not good. And even if you said, oh, there's completely innocent reasons for how this ended up, I want to remind people that there's an episode of the TV show The Studio on Apple TV that was about the casting of the film of Kool-Aid Man that they were doing. It's like, oh, Ice Cube is Kool-Aid Man. And then they start adding more people. And it's like, wait a minute. Are all the voice actors black people and everybody who's live action is white? And they just go through this mess. But even they recognized, yeah, this doesn't look good. They didn't intend to make it an all black, cartoon cast, but they ended up there. And I think you end up with that here, right? Of like,
yeah,
heaven help you if you have a third one of these happen, because there's going to be one situation happening is like, okay, that's a particular data point. 2 is a trend line, and 3 is like, this is a rule of law. This is a hypothesis you can have of like what's going to happen here.
Yeah. So if they cancel the upcoming Black Panther movie, then it's 3 strikes and you're out, Marvel. So watch out for yourselves.
Right.
Yeah. Great news this week that I was very excited about. We got our first teaser for Blue Eye Samurai Season 2. The first season, of course, was a real breakout on Netflix. Really, really, really enjoyed that series. Gorgeous animation, a really, really interesting storyline. I really, really love that first season. Season 2 is coming soon. Excited about that. And they also announced today that they have already signed for a 3rd season. So we're going to get a 3rd season, but it's going to be the 3rd and final season. So that's... Your mileage may vary on that one, obviously. Are you happy you're getting 3 seasons? It's good to know that the story's going to get a chance to land itself, but also kind of disappointing that it's going to be over after 3 seasons. Did you watch this series? I can't remember if we talked about it.
I believe we talked about it, but I'm not familiar with the series. No, I have not watched it myself, but it definitely shows up pretty high on the list for like top things people are watching on Netflix.
Yeah, it's. I mean, obviously, I'm a massive animation fan, lifelong, and it is absolutely breathtaking. It is a beautiful show to watch. The way that they sort of layer the canvas of this era of Japan in the first season is incredible. It is just gorgeous, and then to mix that with pretty unfiltered violence. Obviously, it's a samurai sword tale. And it gets pretty graphic at times, but it's so beautiful. And it's such a really well-told story on top of that. The second season, this trailer sort of shows our lead character, Mizu, is going to continue her search for her father, which will take her to London. So that's going to be a really interesting new backdrop. And of course, the fish out of water kind of story. And yeah, it's exciting to know that we're going to get that soon. We're going to get a 3rd season as well coming in 2028. So it's nice to know that it's not going to be as long of a wait, but also that it's going to be done. Golden Axe. Did you watch the trailer for Golden Axe?
Yeah, I saw it in the notes here when you put it there, and I'm familiar with the arcade game.
Yeah. So I'm old enough to have played the Golden Axe arcade game, and I was such a big Sega head that Golden Axe was available on the home consoles. Have that as well. Never really occurred to me as something that would make a particularly great show. The premise of the game is essentially you choose between the 3 different archetypes. You can be the sort of male warrior, female warrior, or dwarf warrior. and you go on an adventure, you fight progressively harder bad guys, and then eventually it gets you get to the bosses. This series is coming to Netflix, and it's coming quickly. It's debuting on September 16th, or not Netflix, excuse me, Paramount Plus. But really interesting for us is apparently Mike McMahon is involved in this, and Mike McMahon, of course, was the brains behind Lower Decks. This trailer it starts out and you kind of think you're watching old school, like the old Conan cartoon, or it looks kind of like Sword and Sorcery, little Dungeons and Dragon-y kind of vibe, but it's a little more attuned to the sort of modern, the most recent version of Dungeons and Dragons. It's very like tongue-in-cheek, funny, quirky. It's got a little bit of that Lower Decks, tongue planted in cheek, playing funny and fast and loose with the archetypes. I was not, when I first saw there's a golden axe thing, I thought that is absurd. Why would anybody think that was a good idea? And then I watched the trailer and I was like, I'm 100% going to watch this show. So yeah, I mean, it's an interesting take to sort of do, swords and sorcery, but making a little light of the genre as they go through it.
Yeah. I think it's a good take, or at least the trailer seems like a good take. So yeah, we'll see what happens there. But I do remember, all sorts of fun stuff from it was definitely a quarter muncher kind of arcade game.
Oh, for sure.
There's a lot of like, oh man, that's cheap. This dragon is like completely unavoidable with the flames. Unless you're like pixel perfect in the right spot. But fun things like, arguing with each other about getting the mounts, the steeds to beat up on things, yes. Punching the little like gnomes or elves that would have like little bags of goodies that you could take from them.
Yeah, and it's funny because in the trailer, they do play on very much the riff on the video game. Again, at one point, they're trying to get treasure out of somebody and they're literally punching them and treasure's like falling out of their pockets, just like it would be in a video game. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was one of those games too where it was a team up game and you could pummel your partners too, which was always very funny, so they'd be busy wailing on somebody, you'd be like walk over and whack them in the back of the head and steal their stuff. And yeah, it was I guess very unlikely to make for a TV show, but I like where they're going with this. So I'm definitely going to check this one out. We got news on the God of War TV series that they're working on for Amazon Prime. We have a new lead. Dave Bautista will be dressed up in a vaguely shirtless fashion, wearing full body makeup. And wait a minute, does this sound familiar? He's going to be playing Kratos, the lead role, of course, in this show. Of course, Bautista, very well known for being Drax the Destroyer in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, and of course all the Avengers crossover movies and stuff like that. Kratos is a more nuanced character. Drax is a bit of a punchline, both in the comics and in the movies. Is a little bit of a just kind of silly, goofy kind of character. Kratos is much more melancholy and again suffered losses and had lived a life and everything else. So it'll be interesting to see if Batista's got the range to sort of carry a show like this and play that kind of character. But I mean, physically, obviously, he's a very large and muscular man. So aesthetically, it works. Does this make you more or less care about a God of War TV series?
I think it's roughly as even of a swap you can do with Ryan Hurst. Physically fits the mark. We've seen some acting chops in like Glass Onion, the Knives Out movie Glass Onion. His kind of more morose replicant character in Blade Runner 2049. So I get the Drax's little punchline, but I'm like, well, it's not like he only does comedy stuff. So I'm hopeful there. And since he had full body paint, I'm like, this guy knows exactly what he's signing up for. He probably has opinions of like, hey, makeup artist, I need a little bit of baby powder because just trust me, it will make it adhere better to my pores.
Yeah, I don't know. It's funny because what you hear, I remember, of course, Michael Dorn, who had to go through all that to wear all the Worf makeup over the years, was like, hey, I'm just glad I don't have to sit in that stupid chair anymore while they, glue these things onto my face. Mm-hmm. You'd think after a while, they'd have to give you a pretty good paycheck to like sit there and get, again, how much makeup are they going to put on him for this show? Like, are they covering him from the waist up? Is it the whole thing? Like, at some point, are they like, yeah, can we just give Kratos a shirt? Like, I don't know. It sounds like a commitment when you have to show up at like 4 o'clock in the morning before every shoot to sit in the chair for 6 hours.
Yeah, you start asking for some minor rewrites of like, boy, I found some armor. I'm gonna wear this armor for a little bit, so it's just his head sticking up,
Yeah, there you go. Okay, and last but not least, I wanted to flag this one because it made me laugh. So it has been an interesting experience following along with the casts of the upcoming Harry Potter television program that's going to be on HBO starting at Christmas time this year, because so many people are trying to talk themselves or their audiences into feeling like it's okay for them to star in or be part of this reboot of the series, in spite of the fact that J.K. Rowling is actively spending her many millions and billions of dollars on anti-trans causes and really being very unpleasant on her social media channels about anti-trans sentiments. So there was coincidentally two people that posted in short succession. Ali Panku, who is a well-known Canadian filmmaker. She's done episodes of Black Mirror. She was a writer on Schitt's Creek. She's worked on The Great. She's well-known and very talented. She posted on her Instagram a screenshot of an exchange she had with one of her reps, who basically said, hey, I know this is probably not, this is going to be a no from you, but I gotta ask, are you interested in directing episodes of the new Harry Potter series? And she said, absolutely effing not, LOL. But thank you for asking. She basically said it's that simple to stand up to, to somebody who believes and espouses the things that J.K. Rowling does. That trans people have rights and Rowling's views are aberrant. And I think it was wonderful to see somebody not only take that stand, but somebody who has, this is their career. Working on that kind of show would be a huge, feather, because it's a major production. To have somebody say, no, my principles are more important than that is wonderful. And then off the heels of that, another director, Kate Herron, who we know from working on Loki, and also she was very involved in the sex education show that was a big hit on Netflix, said she also was approached for it and said, respected love to you, Ali. They asked me twice, and I had to explain my answer is never going to change from a no, for the exact same principles. So I just wanted to give a big shout out, as somebody who is a very staunch advocate myself, for trans rights and for the protection of trans people. It was really nice to see people who have a platform stand by their principles and say no to this kind of thing. In spite of the fact that so many people that are involved in this production are trying very hard to pretend that this is not a thing.
Yeah, it's the sort of other half of the coin of having these properties, right? That, like, you got to take the good with the bad. If you're Warner Brothers, HBO here, this is what you signed up for. I mean, and it wasn't like a surprise. Like, they clearly saw big dollar signs, but it also means you're going to be talking about this controversy again and again and again, and it's going to be a distraction, right? Now, just like in sports, no winning locker room has any distractions. So somehow, that's always the excuse. And losing teams have nothing but distractions. And so I think the proof will be in the pudding if this bombs, in viewership, if it's not critically adored. Like, there's definitely going to be some reckoning here.
Yeah. I mean, I spend a fair bit of time. I'm actively volunteer and I'm an advocate for LGBTQ rights, and I take it very, very personally when I see people betraying their principles for whatever purpose, fame, money, or anything else. So again, to see people who have stakes in the game stand by their principles, it's really wonderful to see. And I will be curious. Again, I've seen a lot of pushback, but I know that my algorithm is feeding me a lot of people who believe in the same things I believe. It will be interesting to see what the response to this program is when, I think people who are Harry Potter fans in spite of J.K. Rowling, I think, are looking forward to this program. I've loved Harry Potter over the years. It was a big part of raising my children, reading those books, watching those movies, playing video games, and whatever else. It was a huge part of that experience for us. So it was extremely disappointing when, to hear that J.K. Rowling was saying the things she was saying and spending the money she's been spending on the things she's been spending it on. And so, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this show is received when it debuts this year. All right, that's enough of that. Let's move on to the main part of our show. We're going to talk about Star Trek. We're going to talk about Silo. We're going to talk about Lanterns. But let's kick things off with Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Season 4, Episode 5. We're halfway there. Level 5 transporter accident. This was an episode. So, do you have an elevator pitch for this one?
It'll make more sense when we get to our watch list. But I went with puppets in space.
Yeah, I went with the most sensational, inspirational, celebrational, muppetational episode of Star Trek ever made. So the idea behind this episode is that there is a transporter malfunction, a level 5 transporter malfunction, when Scotty is trying to break the record for longest distance transport. He is trying to transport this funny-looking puppet named Little Ricky into the quarters of his arch-rival engineer, Declan, and it goes wrong, and it transforms the entire crew from living beings into living puppets, and chaos, as you'd expect, ensues. Which involves Orion pirates invading the ship, and of course, all the foibles of becoming puppets, which they eventually come together and turn into a strength. Meanwhile, poor Spock, who is the only person not affected by this, ends up being just run ragged, trying to support his crewmates, fend off this invasion, and try and not lose his marbles in the process. It was a really wild episode. What are your first impressions?
I thought it was one of the nuttier episodes. I enjoyed it as kind of the logical sort of peak of TOS era hijinks. Weird sort of choices that can be made in like holodeck episodes, dream episodes, my mind has gone awry kind of episodes, and it was just like a really fun first, right? I mean, I think it was I can wonder, in a 10 episode season where I'm like, man, all of these are like weird special one-offs, a Doctor Who episode, a noir episode, a puppet episode. Of like, I could totally get why people might say, in context, it might be hard to have yet another sort of gimmicky episode. But if you view this independently by itself, I'm like, I thought it was really well done. It's kind of fun to have a lighter side of things kind of take to the show.
Yeah, and the way the episode plays out, and we'll get to the end of it before long, but the way the episode plays out, it does sort of make sense as a story too, in its way. I was surprised. I went to have a look and see how this was received across the blogosphere, and it was pretty mixed. Generally, it's the same case that has been told, back and forth so many times during the modern, the new era of Star Trek, which is older Trek fans are like, this is not Trek, this is stupid, this is farcical, I hate it. versus new people being like, hey, lighten up. It's fun. It's funny. It's just a story. Sometimes Trek is serious. Sometimes it's sci-fi. Like, you just have to roll with. So yeah, there were definitely some people who felt very strongly one way or the other. I kind of waffled a little bit. I was really trying to decide. I don't know that, given the hype, like, they started promoting this last year at San Diego Comic-Con. Was the first time they put out the images of Pike the puppet.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been over a year that we've kind of been anticipating this. And at a point I was like, it's almost a mistake, because we all knew it was coming. We'd seen the puppets. We knew this episode was coming, and I'm not sure it entirely lived up to the hype. I thought it was well done. I thought it was funny, but I'm not sure that it was as everything that I was hoping it would be, which sounds ridiculous because it was an episode full of puppets and Star Trek. But yeah, somehow it didn't quite knock my socks off. And I kind of get people's point of, like, it's kind of making a mockery, but particularly because of the way the episode ends. And so I'm going to jump right ahead to my big question for this episode, which is, does making this a dream, which is to say, so the story concludes with Spock waking up and being told that none of that had actually happened, that it was all in his mind because he had been knocked out during the transporter accident, and nothing had happened. There were no puppets. All of this was just in his head. So everything we watched didn't really happen. It was just something that was related to Spock's mind processing what had happened to him. Is that better or worse than if it had actually happened?
I think it's better from the, like, canonically, should there be some sort of puppet mode that they try to find out, you have people who aren't going to die. Oh no, we're losing life support. Well, better turn on the puppet mode and wait it out, right? Like, that was explicitly part of the plot of, like, Spock is not talking right now, so he can conserve oxygen because we have turned off life support, and all the rest of you Orions are going to fall asleep from lack of oxygen. I think it makes it easier from a, like, not messing with the canon too much. It makes it harder if you're looking at, like, well, what was the point? None of it happened. I would say, from a historical record that's true that nothing happened, if you if you re-examine this as a character portrayal for Spock, who was struggling with a bunch of things, and I think if hopefully people are watching the last time on Star Trek Strange New Worlds, they give you kind of a hint of, like, here's kind of what you need to know and what, all the plot threads that are going to be covered, right? You get to see how Spock is dealing with things like La'an and her problems, to Pring and her problems with Spock, and Spock's own problems about, am I exploring more my human side? Am I exploring more my Vulcan side? If you look at it from that and use the puppets and dream as, like, an excuse to do this character study, I think people will reevaluate this.
Yeah. I think it's easy to look at this episode standing alone. You're right. I think it's easier to look at it if you just came in cold to this episode and you weren't following the sort of arc of Spock's season, arc of La'an's season. It's probably doesn't hold up as well. I think if you look at it within the context of, like, he had just gotten dumped by La'an. That did actually happen because that was her in the flesh, but basically dumping him right before he goes on his mission. So we do have, him in a state of emotional conflict, even for somebody who is practiced at hiding his emotions. Getting dumped by the hot security chief sucks. And then he's had this, sort of journey over the past little bit of, trying to sort of what does he say in this episode? Like, basically, reconnect to his Vulcan side. So, it is interesting. But yeah, again, I found myself a little more conflicted than I thought I would be coming into this. I thought it was going to be like, oh my God, this was like a greatest thing they've ever done. But I enjoyed the Muppet jokes. I enjoyed the puppet jokes. Again, the, Pelia getting chopped in half and them sewing her back together, and Lon's arm falling off and getting put back together. The floating through space stuff, the Pike gets thrown at the airlock and then doesn't die in space. and again, you knew that they had really just sort of gone somewhere else when they're floating around in space together, and Pelia's like, how are we even able to talk in space? Like, yeah, you really had crossed off. Like, if they hadn't made that a dream, it would have made no sense whatsoever. So, I guess in the end, you just have to accept that it was just something fun that they wanted to do. It's a fun way to tell a story, and, it's going to sell them some merch. So, I think you just have to sort of accept that this is what this series is. It's strange, it's weird, it's fun. It can be funny, it can be dark, it can be whatever it wants to be. And this one was just weird and funny.
Yeah, I think there's 2 episodes across Star Trek series that can be compared with and analyzed. So it could be that this episode ends up, in history being looked at as like, it was all just a dream and kind of nothing really happened. Like we're talking in universe, right? And there's no real effect outside of the universe at the meta level on, our society. So Hoshi ran into this in Enterprise in Vanishing Point, where it was like she hallucinated what happened because she was like stuck in the transporter or something.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I don't think that was any sort of commentary on society. I don't think it had societal relevance. I don't think it had any canonical in-universe relevance. It's not like she suddenly became scared of the transporter or something like Barclay. It was just like a weird one-off episode, right? That's like the extreme version of where this could be. I would say it's maybe not because of the impacts to the storyline around Spock and his like harem of ex-girlfriends, for lack of a better term. It's like he's adding them up.
I'm telling you, like 3 of the most beautiful women on the show. Like, right. Bravo, sir.
Right. And then the sort of polar opposite that I'm gonna butcher the quote here about like I'm here to bury Caesar, not praise him kind of view of it is Deep Space Nine's Far Beyond the Stars. I looked it up. That was the name of the episode where they're like, not playing characters of themselves. And so I think from outside of the world, it's a great, study of racism in society. Mm-hmm. Canonically, I'm pretty sure nothing happens, right? It's like Sisko gets a vision or basically has a dream and maybe it mildly changes his viewpoints on things. But if you remove that episode, it doesn't really change the canonical stuff that happens in Deep Space Nine. Yeah. And yet it's a beloved episode, I think, because of how well it was done. So this one, I kind of wonder, is it closer to the Hoshi episode? Is it closer to the Avery Brooks episode? I'd say it's kind of stuck in the middle, a fun one. It's great. If it hadn't been overhyped for like a year plus, if this had just randomly come off like, holy smokes, what the hell did they just do? I think people might even have been a little bit more accepting of this rather than sort of building up the hype of, man, they made a big deal about showing this. It must be a big deal. It must be a big deal.
Well, and it almost does feel like they were waving the red flag in front of the bull. Because there are people out there who are, and I still find it really crazy, the people who are like, well, it's not my Trek, fine. It doesn't have to be for you, like you, there's so much Trek now. There's 60 years of it. There's so much content. If you don't like what's currently happening, don't watch or calm down. But they're livid about this stuff. And it felt like this episode was like, oh, you didn't like the musical episode? Well, it's time for you to buckle up because guess where we're going next? So I don't know. I think it was, again, it was really, really interesting. I think they the puppeteers, the Muppeteers, the way they did everything was really fun and funny, and the way they sort of, I will say some of those puppets, it's funny because some of them are really like cartoonish, and the Scotty one was very sort of the big eyes, very cartoonish, but I like the ones for Chapel and Mbenga were like really good. Like some of them, were really bang on. I personally, if I could have one, I want the Mbenga one. That was so dope. I love that character, but I just thought that was so great.
They made some interesting choices in almost sort of like mini homages to the characters themselves. So you have Pelia being as
the crazy hair.
Yeah, as sort of Muppet as possible. She gets cut in half. She's the one who can think outside the box and say, wait a minute, like, I was cut in half. I'm not dead. We need to rethink what's going on here. I also appreciated I think it was random red shirt that gets a hole blown through him, but,
yes,
but definitely not dead. I was like, oh, maybe they're going to stitch him back together and put stuffing or something. Like, how are they going to get out of this? So that fits with the trope of, like, red shirt takes it. And since you mentioned Mbenga, like, having him when they retake the bridge, having him go full Butcher of Jagal mode with the knitting needle and just like wailing on that dude's knees.
Yeah. No, it's like I say, it was definitely, they definitely rode the edge on this one, and your mileage may vary, but there was some definitely very funny and true to the character moments, right? Like, they definitely were the hyper versions of the characters, but they were definitely also, they definitely met the characters where they were. For an Easter egg, the part where Pike is getting thrown out the airlock and he does the like through the glass hand touch thing with Spock was hilarious. That was like great. Yes. Wrath of Khan joke mixed in there. That one definitely cracked me up. Yet again, Scotty makes a reference to being stuck in the pattern buffer, and I'm like, is this going to be like a running gag that you can constantly talk about getting stuck in the pattern buffer before he gets stuck in the pattern buffer for like 60 years?
I think another. I'm going to count it as an Easter egg because it feels like it's intentional. So the point here of why they were doing this was because Scotty was obsessed with long distance transport.
Yep. And
if you go to Star Trek 2009, Kelvin versus Scotty was guilty, for lack of a better term, of taking Admiral Archer's Beagle and beaming it like halfway across the galaxy or something insane like that. It's unclear to me if canonically that was Porthos or like another
ice planet. Yeah.
It's unclear if it's another Beagle or if that is canonically Porthos or not in the Kelvin verse. But it feels like it's they could have done a million other things of what the transporter setup was, right? It could have been, trying a dilithium crystal replacement alternative. It could have been doing a bunch of different things, but the specific distance thing, I think, was also convenient to have it be, I'm going to beat my rival Declan, right? But I think also an Easter egg hint towards the Kelvinverse interstellar distance kind of transportation.
Yeah. No, that was good. I think the pew 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 definitely has to be Mbenga going crazy with the needles. That was a moment. Best quotes. There were some pretty good ones. I did really like. I like the line from T'Pring where she says, "I am aware that pandemonium is the status quo on the starship, but just this one time, can you please acknowledge that this entire situation is absurd?" And I really liked Spock's line, "Little can one crave order and logic more than being surrounded by puppets." Yep, that checks out. Any other quotes? Did you catch anything that you?
I failed to write the entire thing, but I thought it was kind of mildly haunting and beautiful, and yet useful for telling the story of how they're going to solve the seemingly unsolvable problem of retaking the Enterprise, where we think that Pike is dead, and he survives. Pelia says, like, hey, the captain's alive. He must be, because I'm not dead. And Pike coming back and describing how he was out there in like the inky blackness, the darkness, thinking this is death coming for him. And then he saw all the stars and everything, realized, oh, wait a minute, no, it's not death. I also feel, but again, I didn't get the exact quote, so that's bummer on me. It's basically like a few paragraphs of quote here, right? It's a little longer than like a one-liner. I also thought it was interesting that it reminded me of when William Shatner in the real world went up on the Blue Origin space rockets, and he said it was just like incredibly just black darkness, and he wondered aloud, like, is this what death is like? Given that he's like in his 90s, he might be thinking about that a lot. And so that's where it was like, again, beautiful, useful in episode to like explain, hey man, what did you think when you got shoved out the airlock and you didn't die? And then have it be not just a, hey man, I thought I was gonna die and I'm sure glad I wasn't. It was like, oh, poetic. Like, I thought it was death coming for me. This is what it must be like. And nope, not dead. I still see stars. I can't be dead. I'm just out here outside the Enterprise.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think it's funny because you have to view it through the prism of like, this is Spock's interpretation of these people that he works with and is friends with inside of his mind, and you're like, wow, it's funny that even in Spock's mind, Pike is very poetic about and romantic about space.
Now, a word from our sponsor.
At Cox, your internet and mobile price won't change for 5 years. That's 5 New Year celebrations, 5 Valentine's Days, 5 4th of Julys, 5 Halloweens, 5 Thanksgivings, and 5 summers that go by too fast. Through it all, your price stays the same with our 5-year price lock guarantee. Cox, a step ahead. Requires 2 gig speeds and gig unlimited mobile. Taxes and fees excluded from price lock. Mobile data speeds reduced after 20 gigs.
Now, back to the show.
Should we jump over to Silo?
Let's go for it.
Silo, Season 3, Episode 7, Radio. So, this episode is, it's good. So things are starting to heat up inside of Silo 18. So, the drugs are in the water. So, unfortunately, that ship has sailed. So they now know they have to avoid drinking the water. So Juliet, says, okay, we got to get these guys out the door. So she basically shuffles Lucas and Patrick into their outdoor suits and sends them flying out the door. And then they're sort of, exploring the outside. We get a nice moment for Lucas, who, we first met because he was trying to sort of understand what was happening in the sky, because they don't have the context, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then he goes outside for the first time. He looks up and sees the entire Milky Way galaxy and is like, oh my God. So that was really kind of cool. And Patrick's like, it's not pretty out here at all, because he was convinced that the vision that they had put inside of the cleaning helmets of the green grass and the birds chirping and everything was real, right? For the longest time, convinced that was the case. So for him, you kind of see his whole belief system kind of crumbling around his ears. It's funny how they contrast those two reactions right off the hop.
Yeah, I was kind of worried because I was like, bro, for Lucas, I'm like, you have limited time. I know it's wild to see beyond your wildest dreams, but like, you got to stay on mission, because staring at the beautiful stars for the first time is not helping you survive.
No, very much not. And just so they're sort of, listening on the radio, hence the episode title, where, they're sort of on their way to Silo 17, in the name of going to rescue the children, but also to go and figure out where the cap has been put on the gas pipe so that they can prevent it in their silo. And they hear gunshots and gunfire, and, then the radio goes silent, and we get the news that comes from Camille that's basically like, oh no, they're dead. And so, I think as TV watchers, we're like, no, that doesn't make any sense, but sure, we'll roll with it for the short part of this episode. Knowing that, that seems to have been the outcome, they basically come up with this alternate plan to blow up the pipes in Judicial. Juliet doesn't love it because it, again, blowing up gas pipes and it could be pretty crazy. So Bernard goes and gets Gloria, who we met, a couple of seasons back. She was somebody who clearly was having like, disjointed memories and everything else. And so we get her, who actually lived through the last time that they put all this stuff in the water and how bad it turned out. And, she says, yeah, like thousands of people committed suicide and, went mad and everything else. And she basically convinces Juliet that like, blowing things up is the least of our concerns. If the stuff's in the water, it's going to be bad for everybody. So we have to stop this. So she sort of says, okay, fine. Yeah, we can do that. So they go, the sort of mission that goes, it's, Sims gets them the pass cards. Teddy and this sort of crew go to sort of work this mission to blow it up. And while they're there, all of a sudden they get this call on the radio again, and it's Patrick who's like, "Hey, I'm okay. Everything's okay." And so they basically are like, "Okay, scrub the mission. So they decide to sort of scrub the mission at the very last second, and we sort of get this, there's actually still hope of working things out in Silo 17. So that's sort of the A plot. There's sort of like the three plots to this, which was that one, and then there's this sort of secondary plot with Billings and Hank still trying to figure out what's going on with this murder mystery, and basically the allegation comes up that Knox finds out as part of this investigation that his dad may have faked death and is actually still around, so that's pretty crazy. And then we also have this, we left the previous episode with Helen and Daniel getting out of the long car ride and running into the senator, Thurman, who basically said, like, "Hey, how'd you like to save the world?" Here we get them, we check back in with them, and they are basically, signing this NDA after meeting with Thurman and Per Stinson, the Colin Hanks, of course, playing Per Stinson, this multi-billionaire who has a plan. So they all go, and including Daniel's sister and Thurman's daughter, and they all end up basically going this project site in Georgia where all of a sudden it all starts to sort of fill in the blanks, and now we see these giant tunnel boring machines drilling what looks suspiciously like silos. So
right.
That storyline seems like it's finally catching up to what actually matters to us, and not so much the weird mystery and intrigue. I don't know. It was kind of like low stakes drama.
Right.
Realistically, they weren't gonna kill Patrick and Lucas right now. That doesn't make sense. So that was kind of low stakes. The plot in the past, we finally get the connection to the silos, so that's cool, but also wasn't like the highest of stakes. And then the investigation stuff, man, that is just lingering. Like, I gotta be honest, I don't care about that plot line at all.
Yeah. Interesting that I guess they tried to tie it to that lady who was in two wildly different places of the silo at the same, not the same, in an impossible time period. It was like 10 minutes, how do you get from here to here?
Yeah. So there's definitely some stakes there, and it just the stakes of that storyline. It's like, well, we need something for Billings to do all season. Like it's just been. I don't know. I'm not loving it. I'm not loving that part of the storyline very much.
Again, I guess I'm going to repeat it until we get to the end of the season and I'm like proven wrong or something, that they had it planned out better than I'd hope. I think if they had rethought this as being like Andor's 3-episode arcs, I feel like that might have gone down a little better. And obviously this will play differently in our minds when you can just binge through a season. And not have to wait week to week. But I do feel like the Juliet regaining her memories as an arc, the past stuff that happened in Washington DC arc, and the Billings investigation arc. Maybe if you just made them actual arcs and make them 3 episodes, 2-3 episodes each, maybe we would feel less like, man, this dude's just talking to he's talking to a whole 10,000 people in the silo. Like, he's being very thorough in his investigation.
Yeah. I don't know. Honestly, just again, it feels like the stakes of that when you're talking about like Juliet's like, we're all gonna die if what I do doesn't work. And in the past stuff, at least again, they're raising the stakes here. They're like, okay, the memory erasing stuff, okay, that clearly comes into play in the future. Now we got the silos being built. Okay, that ties into the future. So their stakes at least are increasing on that front. The stakes of the investigation with Billings is like, yeah, obviously it's a tragedy. Somebody died, but like, it just feels so like C-plot, like it's just like the stakes are not high.
Yeah, I think maybe if it was a little bit more clear that they could tie it to, was it like, when that lady started as head of supply, they had like 70 years worth of light bulbs, and now they only have like 2 years or something. Like, that's a big deal. And my big question for that would be, so 2 different options where I could speculate this is going. One is, man, they're straight up hosed if they don't get out of that silo, because like she said, like, if light bulbs, okay, eventually we're in the dark, but also we can't grow food because that's how we grow our food, right? I'm like, okay, were people like stealing and then smashing the light bulbs? I think unlikely. More likely is somebody hoarding the light bulbs of like, I'm gonna be king of the realm now, and if y'all want to survive, I'm the one who knows where the light bulbs are, so make me mayor of the silo.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm like, where did they take 68 years worth of, or what did they do with 68 years worth of light bulbs? Like, you got to be storing them somewhere, or you got to be, smashing them for funsies with your slingshot or something when you're bored.
That seems poor management of assets. I don't know. That was pretty funny. So down to 3 episodes, so it's coming together, and again, I have a sense of where they're going based on reading the books, but there's also like some of this stuff is just kind of being told in a very different fashion. So I'll be curious to see where they decide to sort of take us over the last couple episodes, and again, to keep ramping up the stakes. Obviously there is that looming threat of the gases, there is this sort of looming threat of the stuff in the water, there is, and again, even in the past stuff, like, the stakes are starting to get higher now that we kind of understand what the big mystery is that Helen and Daniel are sort of working against. So yeah, hopefully things start to sort of ramp up, because the ending is coming soon. Season 3 wraps up on September 4th, so not too much farther to go. Okay, let's talk about Lanterns. We got the pilot episode, which of course was called Pilot. Also kind of funny because Hal Jordan's Pilot, but this is a new HBO series. This gets the Sunday night slot, coming off the heels of House of the Dragon, so they're giving it a nice nudge. The show is coming in with some pretty impressive talent, both on screen and off. So Chris Mundy is the showrunner. He's the creator of Ozark, which is a terrific series on Netflix. Co-creators are Damon Lindelof, who may be familiar with, worked on Lost, and of course the shockingly good Watchmen series that HBO did a few years back. And the third banana on this crew is Tom King, who has been one of the top writers in comics for the past decade plus, crushing it on series like Batman and Supergirl, to name a couple. So they are bringing in like the A-lists to work on this series. It is set in the new version of the DC cinematic universe, so it ties into the same universe that Supergirl, Superman, and Suicide Squad and Creature Commandos and all the stuff we've seen just in the last year. And again, speaking of heavy hitters, we get not only do we get Kyle Chandler, of course, well known for many projects over the years, probably most notably Friday Night Lights. Aaron Pierre, one of the hottest young actors around, who's coming off of working on a few different projects. Rebel Ridge last year, 2 years ago, I guess, on Netflix, was a real kind of out of nowhere kind of cool thing. And now he's working on some pretty big projects pretty fast. He's going to be in the Star Wars Starfighter series or movie that's coming out next year, and he's going to be in Man of Tomorrow, which is the new Superman project. So this guy's catching fire pretty quick. And on top of that, we get Kelly MacDonald, of course, Trainspotting, No Country for Old Men, so many amazing projects, and a brilliant Scottish actress doing a pretty funky Nebraska accent. I don't know if you know anybody from Nebraska, so if that might be an accurate one, but it's pretty weird. So the premise of this episode is that it kind of takes place across multiple timelines. We get, younger versions, and basically it's 2026, it's 2016, it's 2006, and it's 1996. We see these different sort of eras across the two main characters' lives. So we get Chandler playing Hal Jordan, the classic 1960s version of Green Lantern. He's a former test pilot. He's cocky. He's kind of mouthy. And we see him across different eras where, in different eras, maybe he's a little more jaded as the years go by versus a little more wide-eyed and he wears the costume for a while when he's younger, but he doesn't wear it anymore. Mm-hmm. And then we get this sort of interesting take on John Stewart, who is a Green Lantern trainee here. He's got the mentor-mentee relationship with Jordan, and we sort of see has this sort of path that he's been on to try and maybe always has had his eyes on the prize for being the next Green Lantern. Living without fear. We see the really interesting scene at the beginning of the episode where his dad is playing William Tell with him with a pistol and firing apples off his head and saying, "Are you afraid?" Which, of course, is the defining hallmark of a Green Lantern is no fear, right?
Yeah, is this like a thing from the comic books related to John Stewart? Because I was shocked that of all... Okay. So that's interesting because it said, okay, unlike Magneto being specifically tied to being Jewish and going through the Holocaust, I'm like, I just don't know a lot about John Stewart's origin as a Green Lantern. So I said, how is nobody freaking out about this on social media and like stupid people trying it in the real world with their kids and stuff? Like, I'm just shocked that there wasn't a like, don't try this at home. Warning. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, so I am a Green Lantern fan. I have been since I was a kid. I read Green Lantern off and on for decades. I'm not fully up to date, and there have, of course, been many different retcons over the years, so I cannot speak definitively about it. Please, if anyone else is a more hardcore Green Lantern fan, let me know. But I don't remember this being part of his origin story. Any iteration that I've read, maybe that is somewhere that I just haven't read those books, but yeah, that doesn't resonate with me. So we catch up with these two, and they've got this sort of mentor-mentee thing going on where John clearly wants the ring and the job. Hal's like, over my dead body, which is pretty funny as you continue watching, and they end up in this little town of Rushville, Nebraska, when Hal basically gets this. Well, John gets this message from the Hal Jordan hologram or hologram, which I've seen online, which made me laugh. Mm-hmm. And he basically says like something's going on in this town. Hal goes. Poor John is left behind and has to get a commercial flight to Nebraska to catch up with them. And they end up on this crime scene where they meet the sheriff, Carey, played by McDonald. And, there's a mass shooting. There's, dead people on the field. And it turns out that there is an extraterrestrial connection to this. Hal ends up basically deliberately getting himself into a bar fight so that he can get thrown into jail, so that he can question this one suspect that they apprehend. And then, of course, that ends up with some pretty funny stuff with him in court, and they don't recognize the authority of being a member of the Green Lantern Corps as an official peacekeeper or law enforcement officer. And then he ends up basically getting bailed out by this lawyer who turns out to be Carey's husband, Billy, played by Jason Ritter, one of my all-time faves, son of John. He basically says, no, there's a string attached to this. You have to come and meet my father. And so we meet his father, William. He lives in this sort of ranch on the edge of town that is filled with what look like militants in training, like what you'd expect to see in a, perhaps a, what's the polite term for these people? Survivalists.
Survivalists. Like there was definitely an era where this would be, like a compound in like Waco or other places where like FBI might have had some very serious issues, but in this case they seem to be preparing for aliens to invade and dealing with that situation, right? Like at least that's the cover story.
Yeah, so that's what they say is, oh, we're not here. This isn't about white supremacy or anything like that. This is about, protecting our folk from their folk, which of course is pretty thinly veiled story there. So eventually, William arranges it so that Hal and John can go and interrogate this suspect, a guy named Waylon. And during the interrogation, Hal basically, throws a few curveball questions at Waylon to prove that he's an alien. You're from Nebraska and you don't have an opinion on Barack Obama being the president.
Yeah.
You must be an alien. You don't know where Harry Potter went to school. Yeah, that was a pretty funny scene where you're yeah, no, you're 100% an alien if you're from Nebraska and you don't have a thought on the first black president of the United States.
Yeah, and when prompted with that of that's your whole thought, it's like, well, there's some controversy around his birth certificate. It's like, oh no, you have outed yourself as the alien. That is severely understating what your opinion should probably likely be. And that was the proof there, right? That well, you know a lot of details that you might train a spy, but you don't pick up any of the natural things that people just know and don't quiz each other over.
Yep. And so that's a pretty cool scene where Hal's questioning him, and then Sanders basically more or less admits, I'm an alien, but I actually have the upper hand here. You don't think I'd come here without some precautions. And he basically says what if I could detonate my entire body? I'm not going to do a suicide by cyanide. I'm taking everyone with me. And so John provokes him. He ends up basically, they get into a skirmish. The guy was going to detonate himself. Hal, basically protects everybody using the ring, and everybody lives. Hal ends up going flying through the wall of the prison, or the jail, I should say. And he's like, well, we're clearly onto something here. And then the episode sort of ends with this really cool flash forward to 2026. This is 10 years later than, so I should have prefaced this by saying that whole storyline takes place in 2016. In 2026, we see John, older, bearded, looking very much like the character straight out of the Justice League cartoon series, returning to Rushville, Nebraska, where he meets up with Carrie, and they have this little interaction. She says, you come with me, I got to show you something. And we see Hal Jordan sitting in the stands exactly where he was 10 years earlier during the shooting. And we see Hal with a bullet hole in his head and no ring on his finger. And we also see that when John wipes his hand aside, John also isn't wearing the ring. So there is no ring. Again, really interesting, timey-wimey kind of moving around all over these different timelines, but a pretty cool little mystery puzzle box that they've created for this first episode of, did they just introduce us to Hal Jordan, probably the most iconic Green Lantern, in a lot of people's minds, only to kill him within the first episode? And where's the ring, and what's the mystery in town? And I think they've done a really good job in this first episode of creating a lot of captivating storylines.
I agree, and one of the other things that I appreciated is how they gave us not Green Lantern, dyed in the wool fans who know a bunch of this stuff, and I guess are arguably Easter eggs if you look at it from that view. I look at it from, they got to sell this to normal people who are casually invested in superheroes and decided to sit down and watch this on HBO Max. So they gave us some lore stuff through the Jonathan Stewart as a young boy, seeing the interview of hey, here's how I got the ring. The ring asked me, are you afraid? And I said no. So it establishes that that's a big part of how you are selected to be a lantern. It's not just pick up a ring and use it. It's no, you have to be of the right type of mentality. I also appreciated how, there's a million different ways you could establish that the ring needs to be recharged, but having the alien say, are you feeling confident? It's been, was it 48 hours? You have enough juice in that ring, or did you bring the lantern to cover up, right? Establishing that it's a limited thing, that he does have a weakness. It's not an infinite power. giving the Green Lantern oath, but not having the Green Lantern himself do it and having it be a mocking version from the alien is another good way to like establish it without sitting there like, well, you know, Jaime, this is how you do this. It's you gotta say this oath here exactly like I say. It feels natural and like a lived-in world in that case, which I appreciate.
Yeah, no, I think those are great points. I would say it's a pretty darn good debut as far as giving access points and information without kind of clubbing you over the head. And, you know, again, this was kind of always billed as, you know, well, it's kind of True Detective meets superheroes kind of vibe. And there is that sort of, you know, older grizzled cop, younger cop, eager to prove himself. You know, there's definitely a vibe there. And then, you know, to sort of have it turn into this sort of double mystery. I'll be curious. It's funny because we spent a fair bit of time talking over the past few weeks about Silo and just sort of the ups and downs of this sort of two timelines thing. Now, that is something that came along multiple seasons in, so it's not an apples to apples comparison, but here we're introduced across multiple timelines. So we see, you know, a very young Jon Stewart. We see, you know, what his sort of upbringing is like. We see a younger Hal and what his sort of life is like when he sort of first gets the ring and sort of comes out as a superhero. We see this sort of, you know, slightly more, you know, jaded version, you know, as we go through. And then, of course, we get to 2026, where, you know, this is, of course, where we are in sort of the main DC timeline of, you know, where's the ring? How's the ring? You know, like what's going to go on with that? Yeah, like I was in for this series, but it sounds like everybody else is in for this series too. The response has been really good. A lot of viewership. HBO does not always share its viewership, but they made a point on their socials this week of sharing that you know, some crazy number was like 10 million people have watched it for the first episode over the first week, which is great. And it did make me think too. It's funny because, you know, everybody's so quick to shoot and ask questions later. You know, when Supergirl came out this summer and it wasn't as big a hit as I think everyone was hoping for, and people were very quick to say, oh, here we go again, the DC stuff, comic book movies are dead, this is, it's all part of a trend, why do they even keep doing this stuff? And it's so funny because if you look at the totality of what they've done in the last, you know, just year and a half, was pretty much since this has started. So, you know, Peacekeeper season 2 wasn't as good as season 1, but it was pretty darn good, and, you know, I enjoyed it. Creature Commandos was bizarre, but I enjoyed that too. I thought the Superman movie was really good, but not great. I didn't like all the CGI stuff, but I think it definitely reintroduced that character in an interesting way, and I really like what they did with Lois Lane in that one. And, you know, you add this onto that list, and you're like, you know, the only thing that's really kind of missed so far is Supergirl. So maybe everyone needs to just take a chill pill here and realize that when you're going to bring together a lot of talented people, both in front of the camera and behind the camera in the writer's room, you're going to have, you know, different takes across different shows, just like Marvel's done over the past number of years. You know, sometimes it's a little lighter, sometimes it's a little heavier, sometimes it's darker, sometimes it's lighter. You know, not everything's going to resonate with everybody. You know, I haven't seen Supergirl yet. I do want to. Unfortunately for me, it didn't play long enough here in my community. I didn't have time to see it. So I will watch it when it's more widely available. But it's so funny how, you know, people are so quick to praise and damn these things. I don't think comic book movies are going anywhere. I think Spider-Man is now like the third or second most, you know, $2 billion across the other day. Like, that's a massive hit. People are excited about Doomsday. You know, this is off to a great start. I think, you know, maybe everyone should take a chill pill and realize that there's still a lot of really good, smart people and really talented people working on these shows. And there's still going to be lots of great stuff coming out.
Yeah, I think the quick 24-hour news cycle in social media encourages people to try to be first of like, I called it. And so it's just a, you know, boy cries wolf sort of situation where eventually one of them is right somewhere. And so they're sort of clamoring to be like, see, Supergirl didn't do well, therefore this is all doomed, all waste of time. Of like, I don't know. As you just stated, you take a step back. It's like actually, it's going to be going pretty well. All winners, perhaps not, but if you're not batting 1,000, you're batting 750. I'm like, that's pretty good.
Yeah, and honestly, it does make me both encouraged for this series. Now, again, I don't want to jump the gun too hard. This is one episode, but it seems like it's off to a really interesting start, and I really like the way that they've built this up so far. Like the characters, like the actors, I think we're off to a great start. It just does give me hope that we're not we're not on this treadmill to nowhere that sometimes these things can feel like. It feels like they're kind of taking the messages that they got from this sort of previous iteration of some of these things and are refining as we go. I mean, again, David Lindelof took Watchmen, something which I consider to be a sacred text, and I was like, I can't get into people messing with Alan Moore's work. That show is fantastic. I trust this guy. I think he's a great creator. Tom King's storytelling over the last decade in DC Comics is amazing. I think these people are good at their jobs, and I think we got to give them the benefit of the doubt. And if this one episode is something we can build around, this is going to be amazing.
Indeed.
All right, let's move on to our watch list. I got one small one and one big one. Quick one. Disney Plus has announced Mandalorian and Grogu is coming to Disney Plus on September 2nd. Your mileage may vary whether or not you care. I watched this in the theater. It was a perfectly fine episode of The Mandalorian on a big screen. It would have made a great half season arc on the show. It was not, I think, as Star Wars movies go, particularly knock your socks off. But if you like The Mandalorian and Grogu, if you like the little, Grogu antics, if you like not seeing Pedro Pascal very much, it's good, worth a watch. If you held out and didn't go see it in the theater, and who could blame you? There it is.
Yeah, I didn't intentionally hold out, but I did not see it in theaters, and so this is right in line with where I'm like, oh, so from my couch I can watch it on September 2nd. I'm like, perfect. If it's better scoped for this than the drama of the cinema, maybe this is where it arguably should have been. Right? It should have been a fourth season. I
truly feel like that's probably what this should have been. I get that they wanted to sort of see if they could move it to the next level, and I think you'll agree once you see it. They definitely splashed out on some of the effects or improvements over the show. Some of the stuff is definitely it is a notch higher than you would have gotten out of a season. But I think you could have cut those corners on a TV show and told this story very effectively, and also done that. I'll be curious to hear what you think of it when you get a chance to watch it the next couple of weeks. I also read a new comic. So my good friend Rob from Oakville, where I used to buy my comics for years and years and years, is still my comic book vendor. Unfortunately, I only get a care package about every 4 months. This one had a bunch of stuff that I had requested, and he threw me a few interesting books in there. One book that I was really kind of excited about was this new series from Image. It's called If Destruction Be Our Lot. And it's kind of a riff on like the concept of WALL-E. Like, all the people have left. There are no more people on Earth, and what's left behind are robots. And no one has seen a human in decades. And it centers around a robotic Abraham Lincoln character who is kind of stuck in his programming and sort of, for lack of a better terms, thinks that he is Abraham Lincoln, but knows he's a robot, but has all these values and knows all these words and understands all these speeches, and is kind of stuck in being Abraham Lincoln and as well as a robot. And the story basically follows him as he's living in this entirely robot populated world. All these other robots are kind of still continuing to go through their routines and sort of do things like they always did. He encounters a robot that was created to make breakfast for a family, and now has no one to work for it. So just driving in circles, asking anybody if they want breakfast. Of course, there's no biological life forms around that want breakfast anymore. So it's just like in this programming loop. there's this robotic bus, and so he gets on the robotic bus, and the bus is like, I follow my route. I always follow my route. And he's like, but why do you follow your route? No one gets on, no one gets off. And they're like, well, you got on. And he's like, yeah, but I'm a robot. Like, it doesn't make any sense. It's a really interesting sort of examination of like what it is to live and the routines that we're in, and just it's just an interesting book. I'm only through the first 2 issues, but I'm really digging it, and I think the third one's out by now. But yeah, if you're looking for something that's just a little different and maybe a little thinky, I really I'm enjoying these first couple episodes, issues of this book, and I'm looking forward to sort of seeing how this story carries on with this character of Abe Lincoln and the robot world.
Yeah, your description there, it sounds interesting, but also has me very confused with my Google image search, where what I see is the number one result is the Image Comics #1, where, yes, there is Abe Lincoln, but there's also like an ice cream man and a pink lantern of some sort, for like a Green Lantern, but like pink or mauve. I'm not sure. Like, there's like a clown. There's for lack of a better term, like a dog who may be in an insane asylum. Like, I'm like, how does any of that fit with what you just described? It sounded very different. Must be later in the series, I suppose.
Yeah, I again haven't hit anything like that so far, but it's just sort of, the question is essentially, what's it like to be a robot when all the what's it like to be a robot in a world where there are no humans to service, when your jobs are all created around service? It was a really, I read the solicitation for it, many months back, and thought, this one actually seems like it could be a really interesting book, and I'm digging it through the first 2. What do you got for us?
First one is a big old playlist from the Muppet Show vault of the Pigs in Space, which I have to believe, the Strange New Worlds episode, like, there must be homages here. I've not seen these episodes of the Muppet Show in a long time. But some of the way that they show them sort of floating in space, and it has that vibe, I'm like, it has to be there somewhere. I'm going to try to see if I can watch some of these and recap. But this came to mind when I started watching the Strange New Worlds episode. I'm like, oh, it's got that sort of wacky vibe to it.
Yeah, I did see somebody using that as a rebuttal on one of the chat boards when I was looking yesterday, that was basically like, you can gripe about, new Trek, old Trek, and everything else, but for those of us that didn't, for long stretches didn't have Trek, this is what we had instead, and posted Pigs in Space. I was like, yeah, fair enough. I remember enjoying Pigs in Space when I was a kid, thinking, well, it's kind of like sci-fi, and I love sci-fi.
My second one is we finally got around to watching Obsession, the big old indie film. Like, I guess it's not as old as I thought. It's May 2026, and we're sitting here in August. I'm like, oh, okay. It just feels like everybody else rode the hype wave, and we finally got around to watching it on Amazon, because we had some credits that made it effectively free to rent. Looks like here in the U.S. it is on Peacock, if you wanted it to be part of a subscription service somewhere.
Yeah, I haven't seen it drop anywhere here yet. I don't normally like gory, horror-y, body horror kind of stuff, but I too have also tapped into the hype train on this one, and there's so many people talking about this one that I'm really kind of curious. It does sound really interesting.
Yeah, for people who've missed out on the premise, I'll read it from Rotten Tomatoes, where it's 93% fresh and 94% on the popcorn meter. After breaking the mysterious One-Wish Willow to win his crush's heart, a hopeless romantic finds himself getting exactly what he asked for, but soon discovers that some desires come at a dark, sinister price. So if you're like me and you consider this part of the sort of indie, YouTuber trilogy, you would put this along with the Backrooms, which I mentioned before on this show, and I'd say I'd go with Iron Lung from Markiplier as a a return to form that we haven't had in a while, right? So these are films that made way more money than they should have, given the shoestring budget that they had in all varieties. And I think it speaks to what I want to say it was Matt Damon specifically covered this in like a Hot Ones episode or something on YouTube, where it's like, why don't they make these kind of films anymore? These mid-budget, mid-market sort of thing, all these horror films. Is like, bro, because we used to have DVD sales, and like, maybe your film didn't do well at the box office, but you can make it up on DVDs. Like, streaming means you don't have that anymore. And these kind of are the exceptions that prove the rule of like, we don't have these. And so the hope, I think, is that the studios would take more chances on these unknown directors. I'm going to guess they're going to be, overwhelmingly or disproportionately in horror, because that's an area where you can cut corners and be like, oh, just don't show the shark. It's actually better for the drama. And it's cheaper to not show the shark for the vast majority of the movie. And hopefully we will start to see more of these. I hope we will start to see, I really hope like a rom-com hits it real big, and brings that back to the forefront. And then maybe a relatively inexpensive buddy cop movie, but not like a huge movie. I'm talking like, oh, we've never heard of these. Oh, this is the next Lethal Weapon series. Oh, this is the next Beverly Hills Cops movie. Not a retread of having a 30-year later sequel. Get some new stuff, get some new directors, get some new properties out there.
Yeah, that's a great point. So I'm curious. So we did talk about Indy Navarrete earlier in the episode, who's going to be playing Rogue in the new X-Men movies. And she is, of course, the breakout star in Obsession. Everyone's talking about her performance. Is it everything that was hyped to be?
Yeah, I think it's an absolute brilliant performance. It's hard to talk too much about it without giving spoilers away for the film. I think, so to be really clear, it is not 100% clear to me that there's like a direct line between, oh, this is our Rogue right here. I'm like, oh, that's kind of a fascinating choice. I'm not saying it's a bad choice, just like, don't go in here thinking, oh, this is going to be why they chose her to be Rogue. Instead, look at it as like, how difficult of a task is it for an actress to do all of these different emotions and portrayals, and how much did she have to put into the performance that like can at best be mildly described on the page, right? I'm like, this definitely lives or dies based on her performance, and less so the wittiness of the writer, the script writer, screenwriter. So that's where I think it's like, oh yeah. There's a lot of artistry that goes into putting this together. I did appreciate how this was put together. There's definitely some notes to give, and maybe whenever you watch it, we'll maybe go through some of the notes I might have about like some discussions that happened in our household of like, well, didn't really like this part. And I said, but if you consider it from this angle where I think this homage is coming from, there's a lot of mystery here in this movie that I filled in some of the blanks saying, I have seen movies like this before. I think I know how to fill in the blanks and feel like it's satisfying. Your mileage may vary, but clearly, what did I say? 93%, 94%. I think most people enjoyed the ride.
Yeah, cool. Well, like I say, it's been on my like maybe radar, but hopefully it lands somewhere on a streaming service here. Peacock is still not available in Canada, so not going to do me any good. But hopefully somebody will have it eventually.
Yeah, it's still. It actually kind of surprised me that it was already available, I guess, for free on Peacock, given that it's only been 3 months. I know the new window is like 45 days contractually.
Yep.
I kind of thought this is when like, oh, you could leave this, out in the theaters, let it, draw some more, even in dollar theaters, second run theaters, and then say it's on streaming right in time for Halloween, October 1st, pumpkin spice lattes, it's colder, it feels creepier outside. Now watch this creepy movie if you missed it, or watch it again when you enjoyed it in theaters.
Yeah, that's actually a really good strategy. The other possibility is if she is sort of in that discussion for an Oscar nomination for it, which I've heard bandied about, maybe it does get another push towards the end of the year too.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see this back in theaters now with a popcorn bucket, you know.
That'd be funny. The Indy Never Ready popcorn bucket. That's yeah.
I mean,
something.
So there is a premise that you break this little like kitschy toy to make the wish. I'm like, can't be that hard to find like some pirouettes or pretzel sticks or something. You slap it in a box and you give it as part of the popcorn bucket, right? Like,
dude, the marketing's right there. Snap into a Slim Jim. It's right there. It's right there. Just snap the Slim Jim and boom.
There you go. See, there you go.
That's good. Awesome. All right. Well, that's going to do it for another week for us. So, hey, Jaime, if people want to find you online, where can they look?
I'm on Instagram as @DevWithAHair.
All right. I am on Instagram. I'm @JPK News, or you can find me on I'm @JPK. And if you really want to spend some time with us, you can come join us on our Slack channel. That's we share breaking news and nerdy memes and all kinds of fun stuff over there. So you can go to our website, check that out, find that link wherever you get your podcasts. And until next time, we will see you in the future. Bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Spotcast podcast. If you want to find out more about the podcast or see the episode show notes, visit the Spotcast website at spotcast.com. If you have feedback or questions, you can get in touch with us on the website. If you like the show, please consider recommending us to a friend, writing a review on iTunes, or pledging any amount at patreon.com/spotcast. You can find details on how to help us on our website, spotcast.com/sponsor us. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the future.
So Tim's actually here. He and my mother decided to come down for a visit.
Oh, wow.
So we've had a full house for a long stretch here. We've got two refugees from Texas living with us who are genuinely refugees that are applying to become Canadians because they are trans and they do not feel Texas is the best place for them right now. So they're here with us. Friends of my daughter and my mother-in-law's apartment complex had a water main break, so she was with us for almost 2 months this summer. She just moved out on Wednesday, and we've had a couple of different friends come and visit us with their families and come from Ontario to see us this summer, which has been really nice. But it's been like Grand Central Station here. We do have a lovely large home here out in the countryside, but boy, it has been busy. So it was so busy, in fact, that like not only did I not have room for Tim and my mom here last week, but I didn't even have room for my son, who also had to go stay. They all been staying down at my aunt and uncle's farm because I even had to give away Xavier's bed at one point to someone else. So thankfully, my mother-in-law's apartment has been repaired. She moved back this week. Xavier just finished his summer co-op term. He just moved back today. And yeah, my folks are coming up tomorrow, so they'll be here for another week. I was thinking actually it's probably good that you're not around next week, because if I went down to my office to record an episode of Spotcast while Tim sat upstairs, I think he'd be miserable. So it's probably okay that we're not going to have an episode next.
Yeah, it works out. It's kind of kismet in that way, right? So I'm looking at the calendar here. So I'll be out next week. So missing what would normally be the week of the 27th. I'm okay for a couple weeks after that in September. I'm looking at, I have got a trip coming up. So I haven't booked the flights yet, but it's an event September 15th through the 16th in New York. But if I'm looking at those dates, let me just grab my calendar real fast to make sure. looking at those dates, those are a Tuesday and Wednesday. I would probably fly into New York Monday the 14th, return from New York the 17th. So I'm arguably in an okay spot to do like we did today, which is, hey, I came back to Seattle on the 17th, I catch up with the shows, and I'm ready to go on the 18th, that Friday.
Yeah, I mean, my schedule right now, as far as work goes, is pretty straightforward. So I don't mind shifting to whatever days work best for you, sort of as we go forward. I have a couple things coming up later in the fall. We've got a big health and safety conference out here that I will be working at / attending coming up in October. But yes, so far we're nothing major coming up. Good.
Yeah, I'm even looking out through October. I'm like, okay, maybe a trip to Utah the 4th through 6th. That's early enough in the week, not a big deal. Our big customer conference, the 19th or the 21st of October. I'm like, that means we can just shift it to Friday. And so far, it's looking pretty good to finish up Strange New Worlds, Silo, and I can't do my math, possibly Lanterns without further disruption.
Yeah, and we'll have to decide how involved we want to get in some of the stuff. I tried to update the calendar a little bit last week to just sort of give us a sense of what we're working with this fall. There's a few like one-off things, and then there's some stuff that's ongoing. Obviously, Dark Matter's starting I think end of the 28th when Dark Matter comes back. And then there's a few curveballs coming here because Vision Quest is coming, and that's going to be on Wednesdays starting on October 14th. And then they decided to really lay into us for the new season of Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power. They are doing the entire season over 3 weeks because they hate us.
So it's 8 episodes, so they're probably doing like 3 episode drop, 3 episode drop, and then 2 episode drop.
That would be great. It's 4 episodes on day 1, 2 episodes on week 2, and 2 episodes on week 3.
Yeah, that does feel personal now. Like, it was definitely a screw you guys. Like, oh, you know how it's like watching Lord of the Rings, like one of the extended editions, like that.
yeah. So it's going to be busy in there. And then just to absolutely lay into you, my friend, around your Thanksgiving. So November 25th is the day of absolute merciless cruelties, because that's travel day, right? That's people are going places for Thanksgiving. That's the last 2 episodes of Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power. It's also Vision Quest. It's also the entirety of Blade Runner 2099 drops on the same day on Amazon as the last 2 episodes of Lord of the Rings.
Okay, so it's like physically impossible to, because it's like 2 hours, 1 hour, and then how many episodes is the?
I believe it's 8 episode drop one day.
Yeah, that's too much. So I think it sounds like Blade Runner gets a like, well, how far do you think we can get? Maybe a couple episodes, and then try to pick it off the subsequent week or 2.
Yeah, I think that is probably the most sane thing to do, because it's going to get silly if we try and do more than that. And then it's funny because after that it kind of drops off a cliff. Like, we're not going to really have a lot of content. Vision Quest wraps up on December 2nd, and other than that there's nothing else other than Avengers Doomsday coming that month. So I think we'll have a little bit of space around the December holidays and stuff like that, which is probably not the worst thing for you and I as well. And then we're starting to see things starting to slot into to January too, right? We're going to get Ahsoka season 2's coming back at that point. Some of this other stuff we talked about today is peeking in there, so I'll have to start updating the calendar for that as well. I do highly recommend, if you're looking for something something to chew into, Blue Eye Samurai is fantastic. Highly recommend. It's funny because it was a former colleague of mine at my last job basically said to me, like, it dropped, and I was like, oh, that looks really cool, I should check that out. And then he came like running to me, he's like, have you watched it yet? And I was like, no, I haven't watched it. He's like, it is amazing. I was like, okay, well, all right. And he was right. It is really, really quite again, just exquisite animation. on top of a pretty really solid story as well.
Wow, yeah, I'm gonna have to find some time for that one. That's quite the endorsement.
You've got till mid-January to get ahead of that one, or you could just wait till the whole thing lands in 2028, and you'll can binge through the whole thing. But yeah, no, I really dug that series, so I'm looking forward to more of that. Yeah, we'll have to watch the first episode of. Again, I'm curious. Is Golden Axe if they're going to drop a chunk or if they're going to drop one or how one's going to come out? They didn't really say. So I don't see us covering that one regularly, but I'm curious to see how that went together. Yeah,
at least those are probably 20-minute episodes without ads, and so they're a little bit more achievable. A half hour if you've got ads and stuff. So
yeah. Well, keep your fingers crossed.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyways, Lacey, we're going to have lots of stuff to cover this fall, which is good. I think the ball rolling. And I'll be curious. At some point, they've got to announce what's going on with the return of Starfleet Academy, because that one should time out, I think, in the first few months of 2027. Somewhere in that same window that we got at the first season this year, especially because it's done. It's in the can. Like, if they're trying to sort of keep people on the line for Paramount Plus while all this litigation goes on, and that one's going to come out, and then we're getting the 6-episode final season of Strange New Worlds probably around this time next year. So Trek is running out just in time for our 10th anniversary season.
Right.
Blue Jays are half a game out of a wild card spot now. Half a game, and now that I've said that. Damn it! Why can't I just keep these things to myself?
It's definitely still quite a bit of season to go. I know the last 10 games will get real nutty for the real tight races, but looks like the Mariners are doing okay right now against Chicago for what is it, a 3-game and 5 games back, depending on whether you're talking about the wild card or talking about the AL West.
Yeah, of course, as soon as I say that, I just check the score. The freaking Yankees beat the Blue Jays. So I don't know how you feel. Do you feel strongly against the teams that are in your division? Like, I assume all people just dislike the other teams that your teams play the most. But I feel like the Blue Jays really got absolutely snogged on this one, because they have the division with like all these villains of the league, right? They've got the Yankees, they've got the Red Sox. I mean, you could argue that the Rays and the Orioles are not necessarily villains, although the Rays are just like the absolute nemesis of the Blue Jays. They just pummel us every year. Even when they're only winning like 60 games a year, that 10 of those wins are against the freaking Jays. Like, they just own us.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where I think the Astros get most of the ire from Seattle Mariners fans, especially their winning ways fairly recently.
You don't hate the Sacramento Athletics?
No, I feel like they're not exactly lovable, but they feel more like a normal rival rather than a hateful villain. Like, I think there's that sort of tier. The Rangers, kind of the same, like, normal rival, let's compete on a Sunday afternoon kind of thing. The Angels might have had a little bit more of that during the Vladimir Guerrero Sr. era. But I don't feel like there's as much of that animosity there, even during, like a Shohei Ohtani kind of era. Like, it just didn't have that vibe. And it just feels like the Astros are more sort of hateable as an institution and less so the players.
So, being your adorable American self, you must be more excited for football season, which is a mere weeks away now.
Yeah. As a Cowboys fan, it's always going to be our year until it's not. And then, hey,
on paper, they look good this year. On paper,
and people are like, well, what do you think about the defense? I'm like, defense was number 32 in trash, and so if you can get to 16, we're winning the Super Bowl guaranteed. Because we had number 1 offense and number 32 defense, and see where we ended up. So if you could just be league average, absolute medium average, it's easy, 70-0 Super Bowl victory. In contrast, having enjoyed the local hometown Seahawks, who now get the rematch with the Patriots, was boy oh boy is that a trap game for a team. There's definitely going to be a storyline coming out of that game, and I think that's why the NFL, in its wisdom, is like, "Yep, we got to make this the start of the season." So either the Seahawks win and the Patriots look like, "Oh my God, Drake May, maybe he's not the answer." Drama for the Patriots, or the Patriots win and it's like, maybe it was a fluke that the Seahawks just had all the stars aligned and won. So you might as well, if you're a sports journalist, just have ChatGPT write out the two variants and have some mimosas and chill.
Just press send at the end.
Yeah, just like, well, which one is which? Oh, that one? Great. There you go. Ready to roll.
Yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic as a lifelong Detroit Lions fan. Last season was just the perfect storm of awfulness that landed on them between the injuries, and then they played a first place schedule, so they just got absolutely every single game was a tough one. And the Bears were ascendant, and the Packers were better than expected, and it was just an absolute recipe for disaster. And they still kind of hung around the playoff picture until they didn't. But especially after making it to the NFC Championship game the year before, it was like, I think that might have been the peak of this era. But hopefully they can find a way to salvage it in the end. But yeah, I don't know. Again, it's the same thing as being the Blue Jays in the AL East. Being in the NFC Central is brutal, just brutal. Like you can get lucky and you can get the Bears be the Bears for a while there, but Green Bay seems to consistently roll out good teams, and like just sometimes you just got the odds stacked against you.
I mean, here's the I was going to say the bear case because I was thinking like bear bull market, but that might be offensive here. So I'm going to say the hype man case is the Bears won the NFC North with an 11-6 record. Everybody else was 2 games behind. 9-7 Packers, 9-8 Vikings, 9-8 Lions. From a Lions team that got ripped to shreds from a coaching standpoint. They were so good. It's like, hey, you're a head coach now. Hey, you're a head coach now. To be that close while having such a large administrative change, I'm like, And as you mentioned, the injuries, I'm like, things roll a little bit differently. Maybe you're standing atop the division.
Well, and that one too, if you take a look at the strengths of schedule for last year, man, the Lions got absolutely, I mean, they deserved it. They made the NFC Championship game the year before. They won the division pretty handily. They got the first place schedule and they just got pounded. So, this, we're going to have strangely, we're going to have like the 4th place schedule. So I'll take it. I will take a few. I think they're playing the first game of the season against the Saints. I'm like, that's fine. With that, yes, please, that's fine. I will take a few of the easier ones, and obviously you want to test your mettle, but there's plenty to test within your own division. Again, I think the Pack and the Vikings and the Bears are all going to be good again. So yeah, and man, I hate the Packers. I absolutely loathe them. I kind of pity the Vikings and their fans. I do kind of, to a lesser degree, do the same thing for the Bears, but I really loathe the Packers. Their fans and their team is just the worst. I don't know. I mean, do you still feel that for like the Commanders or the Giants? I mean, those are like the traditional rivals, right?
Yeah, the way
Eagles.
The way it works is like in increasing levels of dislike is the Giants are kind of more like your sibling, it's like a sibling rivalry. Commanders is kind of more like, the high school rival. We either literally at your high school or another. The Eagles are, basically the supervillain, right?
Yeah.
This is Lex Luthor. This is Lex Luthor level of nemesis. They
kind of had that same but they couldn't get over the hump kind of vibe for the longest time, and now they've racked up a couple of Super Bowls in the last few years. You're like, oh yeah, and also double FU. Like, yeah.
Yeah. When they played the New England Patriots for that Super Bowl, it was kind of like, aliens versus Predator. No matter who wins, we lose, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's true. I've found myself in we're almost in that scenario for the Maple Leafs in last year's NHL playoffs, because it was looking like it could have been Montreal representing the East, and that was like, oh no, we can't have that, because as Maple Leafs fans, you are raised to be like, no, never, never. And then we had in the West, we had people were pulling for who was the team? The finals. Oh, it was the Golden Knights. It was the Golden Knights because they had just signed away our like second best player, Mitch Marner. So it was like, if this ends up being either the Montreal Canadiens win the cup and we have to listen to Canadiens fans talk about how great they are and how bad we suck, or this guy who just like absolutely bailed on the Maple Leafs to go play in Las Vegas wins a cup. This is a lose-lose scenario. Luckily, the Carolina Hurricanes saved our bacon by knocking out the Habs and then winning the cup. So neither of those things came true. So I think every Maple Leafs fan was just a little bit glad that Carolina was the one that hoisted the cup at the end of last season.
With those kinds of thoughts, it does make me wonder, and I'm a transplant. I'm not local to the Seattle area, but maybe I should ask a longtime Seattleite, like, why don't Seattle Mariners fans loathe the Kansas City Royals? And like, why, Jaime? I'm like, because the Mariners never been to the World Series, and they're like, we threw these people in the trash bin in the garage sale, cast-offs, went and won a Super Bowl. It's like, oh, I'm not Super Bowl, a World Series.
World Series.
It's like the equivalent of like, well, I threw this painting. Oh my gosh, it was a Monet. I thought it was just that weird painting that Grandma and Grandpa liked.
Well, for the longest time, that was the legacy of the both the Lions and the Maple Leafs, was guys play like dog poop when they play for them and then go play like champions when they go to other teams. Like, why? What? Very famously, they traded the Maple Leafs traded for a defenseman in early 2000s, a guy named Larry Murphy, who was a stud defenseman for the Pittsburgh Penguins. And he came to Toronto and everybody was like, this is going to be amazing. And he did not perform well. And they were like, get him out of town. And so they traded him away for a bag of peanuts to Detroit. Oh, didn't he win some championships as soon as he went there? Oh, that was awful. Yeah. And some teams just have no luck, Although I will say, having seen some of these like out of nowhere stories over the past few years, again, the Red Sox break their huge long curse. The Cubs break their huge long curse. We've seen so many of these great stories of like, oh, they've come out of nowhere. The Knicks just won their first title in over 50 years. Like, I don't want to be an absolute sucker because that's what most Maple Leaf fans feel like. But, you gotta hold out hope that your day may finally, that expression, the sun even shines on a dog's backside sometimes. Like, your time in the sun might finally come someday.
Yeah. It feels like for the Mariners, the sort of polar opposite of like, would you trade fandom's question, I think should obviously be the Miami Marlins. People are like, what? What? I was like, well, hold on. Two titles to 0 of ours. So yes, I mean, they're effectively like trash. Their owners don't give a crap. Like, I hear you, but also 2 titles. Do you want caring owners and then just like always frustrated and never getting there?
Yeah. And it's funny how much that does. It really does lift a weight. Like I remember following the Blue Jays as a kid and then into my teens. And when they finally got over the hump and they won that first series, it was like, oh, they finally did it. And then they did it back to back. And it was just like, what an amazing run. And yeah, they haven't won anything in like 30 years now, but that was in my lifetime and I got to see it and it was pretty amazing. And it's the same thing now that I've seen the Raptors hoist an NBA Cup, an NBA championship. And, I'm just like, yeah, like I lived that whole experience, that whole ride, the ups and downs, got to see them all the way to the end and win that title. Like, what a moment. And again, it really does kind of like take the weight off your shoulders when you get to experience that, when you never have had it, like as like so many people did. I mean, again, there's like 104 years between Cubs titles. Like that's 4 or 5 generations of people that came and went without that team hoisting a title. Like that's grim. People are like, oh, the Maple Leafs. I'm like, yeah, it sucks, but it's like 50 years. It's not like the end of the world. It's bad, but it's not like apocalyptically bad.
Am I correct in thinking that the 100 and some years that you talked about there is basically the distance between A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms and Game of Thrones?
Pretty much. Yeah. That's a great comparison for our audience. Yeah.
Right. It's like, look how much the world has changed.
Yeah, there was legit horses and buggies on the streets of Chicago when they won that last one. Now there's like robotic cars. Like, okay. Yeah, so things have changed a bit. Yeah. Well, they say it's the hope that kills you, but it's also the hope that sustains you.
Yeah.
It's funny, again, I think it's the benefit of now creeping into my 50s too. I think it's also, you sort of reach a point of like, I really enjoy sports. I enjoy the ups and downs. I enjoy the highs, and I don't enjoy the lows, but you kind of get used to it. But you also just gain so much perspective where you're like, it's not life and death. It's just fun. Like, if they win, great. If they lose, life goes on. Like, the sun will come up tomorrow. Right. I just can't live and die by my sports the way I used to.
Yeah, there's some sort of philosophy stuff that people can think about, and I've used this analogy at like work sometimes. They're like, doesn't this bother you? I'm like, look, man, like the sun comes up tomorrow, whether I want it to or not. So why stress about this? I literally can't change it. Just accept it.
Yep, well said. And that's how Maple Leaf fans get through the day and week and year. All right, man. It is extremely late here on the Atlantic coast, so I'm going to call it a night. But great catching up with you. Enjoy your travels, and we'll reconvene in a couple weeks.
Talk to you then.
Let me know. So you're thinking third or fourth?
Wait, hold on. Okay, so 27th would be the normal day. 3rd, yes, September 3rd, which is a Thursday. Yep.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and we'll do our regular totals plus maybe a little dark matter if we have time.
That's right.
Cool. All right, buddy. Talk to you soon.
Talk to you later.
Right. Bye.
Bye.